Hey everybody, Susan Patel here. We're back with a virtual summit on sales prospecting. Really excited to talk to you today. I've got Trish Bertuzzi of the Bridge Group and the author of one of the best sales book, in my opinion. I didn't actually realize you're the author. I've read this book. I've given this to a bunch of people on my team. And I was like, oh crap, when I was doing my research, I've got the author here. So Trish, welcome and thank you for joining us.
It is my pleasure.
So Trish, you're probably one of the most seasoned sales folks I know. I mean, what, 21 years, is that right?
21 years at the Bridge Group. I'm going to skip telling you how many years in the sales profession.
Well, let's just put it this way. You've done sales in with many different forms of technology. And
Yes.
I find that it's very rare that people who have done sales for that long are actually current or ahead of the curve. And you're probably one of the few people that are like actually thinking about technology and using it in a positive way. Again, talking like a human being, engaging and whatnot. But we could talk about that all day long. What I really want to talk about was the study you did, and we'll link this in the show notes with the Sales Hacker blog or community. It's called the Ultimate Sales Engagement Guide. So folks, if you want to check that out. But you did a study which was really interesting on the different forms of communication. You did a ton of research and how different forms of people like, really just to preferred mediums of contact. Do you mind just talking through that a little bit?
No, it'd be my pleasure. So we partnered with Sales Hacker and with Modern Sales Pros. So between the Bridge Group, Sales Hacker, Modern Sales Pros, we had a pretty large audience of people that participated in the survey. The impetus for it was because I think we have sort of jumped the shark in understanding that we need to focus on our ideal customer profiles. We have to sell to specific buyer personas using, language that resonates with those buyer personas. So I felt like we were good there. So this is the next evolution. And the next evolution is, how do let's say you have 4 buyer personas in your ideal customer profile. How do they want to be communicated with? What is their preference for communication channel? So that was the impetus of the study, is to take what everyone's doing around persona-based selling to the next level and bring it down to communication channel.
That makes sense. So you took I think there's 4 or 5 different personas. There's executives, sales, marketing, operations, ops. And you talked about different communication methods. Do you know by any chance, off the top of your head, the different forms? Like, what do executives like?
So I didn't memorize the report, but yes, I have some of it off the top of my head. So when we were talking to executives, not that we were talking to them, when they responded in the survey, we're like, what is your preferred method to consume information? Or to be communicated with. And for executives, believe it or not, it was webinars. And I thought that was so interesting, but it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because webinars are on demand, they're recorded. They're not going to go and sit there during the middle of their very busy day at 1 p.m. Pacific time and watch a webinar. But what they will do, if it's a topic that is of interest to them, is A, either send someone else, or B, even more likely, watch it during nights, weekends, or whenever it is that they choose to consume the information. So I think the on-demand part of the webinar definitely appeals to the executives the most, and that made sense.
Yeah, totally. It's really interesting. It feels like counterintuitive to what I would think, right? Like usually the webinars are targeted to like the manager or the practitioner, the individual contributor, I guess. I would think like a sales and marketing person would be the one who would prefer that, but that's interesting. And any other stats like on the sales, marketing, ops? Was there anything that kind of stood out?
So let's be clear on the executive webinar though. It has to be executive information being delivered. I mean, they're not going to watch a webinar on, 10 ways to increase your voicemail response rates, right? Even I wouldn't watch that webinar, but they will watch educational things. If they're trying to address a very specific issue in their industry or whatever the case may be, they will consume that type of content. from a sales perspective, salespeople like one-to-one video. And I think video is not being used as effectively as it could be in the sales process. When most of the time when you see people talking about video, they're talking about top of the funnel, right? They're talking about, hold on board. Hey, Trish, this is me personalizing because I put your name on this whiteboard. Okay, done with that. So I think we focus so much on using video top of the funnel, but where I think it's most powerful is middle and bottom of the funnel. For instance, a salesperson is delivering a proposal to an executive sponsor. I think it's a great idea for them to deliver it with an accompanying, that's a hard word to say, video that says, here's what we talked about. This has been my understanding. These were the outcomes you asked me for. Here's our process, whatever the case may be. If you send a video that articulates the nature of that proposal with all the accompanying details, you just escalated your sales process, because you can say to your internal champion, I know that you're working with Bob, Sally, and Betty. They're on the decision-making committee as well. If you could share this with them, I would greatly appreciate it, or whatever the case may be. So I think video is really, really helpful there, and salespeople can really relate to that.
I love that because, well, I wanted to share real quick. I have, in addition to Mailshake, I also run a digital marketing agency, and that's exactly what we do. We use video at the middle and bottom to address friction points and questions that people have. So after we do a proposal initial call, we send them proactively like, here's how our team is structured, which answers the question of like, how are you different than the bazillion other agencies out there? And there's like 3 or 4 videos, and we kind of drip them along. But anyways, I love that. I totally agree that I think video, when people say it, they like scratching the surface with the like, there's Wistia's, Soapbox, Scope, Vidyard's, forgot their platform's name, but those are great, like to start the conversation and maybe get it going, but you can continue to use it and it's way more powerful. Do you think that builds that relationship as well?
I absolutely do, because it's human. It's human. People, I forgot who did the research, but somebody did the research that showed that close rates were higher when salespeople used video cameras.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I didn't do video sales calls till probably the last 8 months. My bad, right? I was always so focused on, I don't like my hair today, or then I have to put on makeup. It's different for women. We can't just go like this and off we go. Yeah. But since I finally sucked it up and said, nobody cares what I look like, and I've started doing video sales calls, I can see that it does move the sales process along much more effectively. So shame on me for not getting on the bus much faster, and shame on any of your listeners who aren't taking advantage of that communication channel.
Absolutely. I think, I feel like people, like you were saying, like yourself, you had valid reasons of why you probably shouldn't get on video, but it's not what you look like. It's about the emotion, the relationship, the people seeing the excitement. When you talk about something, I can see you go forward. You're using your hands. Maybe not everyone's that visual, but it still builds that rapport much better than most. And do you think video works so well right now because not everybody uses it? So the folks that do use it, they get that like advantage of building that rapport?
No, I think we've gone past that. I think it just really is human communication.
Yeah, it's the next best thing to shaking someone's hand in person, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I rarely, we run 25 to 32 active clients at any point in time. And if I have ever met one of them, so face to face, it will be a miracle.
Absolutely. That's awesome. But but they've seen you, you've done videos.
Absolutely.
You feel like you
probably
know
ad
them,
nauseum. They're probably like, make her go away now.
That's awesome. So another thing I want to talk about, you mentioned briefly here is talking like a human. Something we probably like, it's embarrassing that we have to talk about because people should be doing this, but they don't. I feel like salespeople are the least human like least human in their tone, their voice, maybe not their voice, but what they say. What's your take on this? Like, where's the problem?
Well, I think it's a confidence level a lot of times is that sometimes when someone's selling, they take on their selling persona
Mm-hmm.
and they think I know my sister, who's not in sales, when we're someplace together and I'm making sales calls, she goes, oh, there she is. Listen to her phone voice. I guess I adopt a different persona when I'm doing outbound calling or something. And my sister always makes fun of me. But I think a lot of times we forget that we're just talking to another person. I especially think it's true if we're selling to someone who we don't think is our peer. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So if you're a sales rep and you're selling at the C-suite level, maybe you're not comfortable or think, you haven't earned the right to talk to them like a peer. But if you've done your job, yes, you have, because they're talking to you in the first place. So good on you. And secondly, they just want you to teach them something they don't know. You can do that just being totally human and being yourself and just sharing information. I don't know if
Yeah,
that made sense to anyone other than me, but in my head, that made sense.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's about the value you're creating and the content, and less the like the persona of that salesperson's like sales persona or whatnot. Um, I think that's, at least that's how I interpreted what you said. Um, I want to go back to that study or kind of details from the our previous conversation. Um, again, there's preferred channels for different folks: webinars, phone, email, LinkedIn messages, SMS, what have you. But have you seen a power of, like, I guess, like any using less saturated channels? Like, I don't know, like, so for example, not as many people are doing SMS, or maybe they are, but like, does that work any better, or anything kind of to add on that front?
Well, you know, I give I give people the option of responding to me via text. So when I'm doing outbound reach, I'll say you can get back to me via email or text or a call, and I'll give them my mobile number. It is amazing to me that some people do prefer to just respond to me via text, and that's fine. What I don't like, and this is just a personal preference, is I wouldn't want to be prospected using text. If
Mm-hmm.
I've already engaged with you and you're confirming our next meeting, or you want to give me a detail or some more information and you text me, then that's fine. But if I get the generic, hey, I am a technology provider selling whatever, and I want to get 15 minutes on your calendar, even though I publish my mobile number, which is almost like putting it into the public domain, I just don't think it's as effective for initial outreach.
Yeah, it
So,
totally makes sense. It's good for continuing the conversation, but
yeah,
not right
yeah.
once you've
And
got
I,
that conversation.
and I think you can use it for outreach, but give it as
Mm-hmm.
an optional communication channel to whomever you're trying to get in touch with.
What's your thoughts on kind of the omni-channel approach, where some folks are using, email, phone, and SMS or text?
All at the same time?
Well, yeah. So like it may start with let's say a phone call or an email, and later on down the funnel, or you get a phone call, or they miss you on the phone call and they text you. It's definitely feels more brute force. Um, but yeah, I mean, any thoughts on that front?
Well, I mean, I think you have to mix up your channels until you figure out how those particular set of buyers respond. I think you have to try everything to see what gets a response. For a while there, I thought LinkedIn voicemail was going to be, woohoo, now I can send you a voicemail over LinkedIn. Yeah, people just didn't groove on it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, I think there's some channels that just kind of are a hit, or they just kind of completely miss. I feel like voice messages were pretty good for a bit, but I feel like video just kind of trumps that, right? Like you could just skip that with a nice little video.
Yeah.
Um, so on that note, you mentioned something important here. I want to just dive into is about, it depends on, you said it's really about the prospect and their channels and testing. I guess if I'm doing sales, or if folks that are new to sales or scaling up their sales organization, um, how do they do their research, or how do you test? How do you figure out which channel to use for someone's ICP?
Well, number one, you can A/B test, but number two, you don't have to agonize about it. Here's a crazy thought. Ask them, right? When you have someone on the phone, however you got them, say, hey, question for you. What's your preferred channel of communication? Phone, just do impromptu on the spot surveys and start collecting that information and start grouping it by buyer types within your ICP. You have a sales development team and a sales team. They're talking to customers and prospects all day long. Why don't we take advantage of that and actually ask them questions?
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's a simple concept, right? Like it's
I
very
know,
simple.
ask.
Yeah, ask. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of, with our sales team, we found the best conversations and flow, and even close rate improves with this, is starting the question of asking a question or two of
Hmm.
just, what the heck are you trying to get out of this thing?
Yeah.
And what's the output you're looking for? Like, what can I help you with? And some folks are like, yeah, I'm just starting a company. Some folks are like, hey, look, I'm comparing you guys against two other tools. This is what I need. Do you do this? And sometimes the answer is no, and that's the end of it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we make a note to follow up if and when we build that feature. I'm like, hey, we got this now. Do you want it, right? And so asking that preferred communication channel. Do you think it works via email too? Can you do this before you get on the call with somebody?
Hmm.
That's a tough one, right? Because you kind of have to get them to engage first, right?
Yeah, I think it might be weird via email. I don't think it's as effective. I'm
Fair
gonna think
enough.
about it a little bit though.
It could throw them off, right? Like, hey, what do you, maybe if as you're kind of going along the conversation and trying to book a meeting or act, they've agreed to it, maybe you can ask them at that point, like, hey, do you prefer a phone call? Do you want me to just send you a video? How would you, I don't know. Just throwing
Exactly.
that out there.
Yeah.
So you've built and optimized and coached lots of sales team. What are some common mistakes people make? Like, when you come into a company, what are you fixing?
Oh goodness. Well, it
Probably.
depends because no two
Okay.
companies are alike, right? So it depends. Sometimes we're fixing process issues, so they're not optimizing their outreach or their inbound conversion process. Sometimes we're fixing people problems, they need training. Sometimes we're fixing messaging problems. Like, oh my God, you're boring me, never mind your buyers. So I think it really depends. Every company's different. Um, One of the most important things we do, though, is help people identify what they're actually doing right
Mhm.
so they can replicate it. A lot of consulting firms go in and they're always looking to fix everything that's broken. I think one of our big value adds is we're looking for what you're doing right, because sometimes they don't even know that they're doing it right, and you want to build upon that. So we help them in that area.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, people are so focused on like fixing all the things that they could, or improving all these things, but they kind of
Exactly.
dismiss like doing all these things right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Um, and I actually, just one last question for you, because I think this has been great. I've learned a lot. I'm going to go back to my sales team and kind of go look at it from the, like, hey, what are we doing right? Let's do more of that. I'm definitely going to ask and ask customers a lot more stuff, and definitely test out new channels and whatnot. But um, you know, you've definitely, you've again come into companies, you help kind of fix their sales team or improve things, how do you go about expanding opportunities? Like, so sales team, like, hey, we got leads, things are working, we want to scale up to, we want to 2x this, 3x this whole thing. What's your approach on that front?
Well,
I know it's a big one.
No. I mean, who doesn't want to 2x and 3x this thing, right? Anyone who's got a VC firm or a private equity firm sitting on them, 2x, 3x, blah, blah, blah. I think you got to step back and say, does your market want you to grow at that rate? Like, do you even have the total addressable market that will allow you to do that? Do you have the infrastructure to support that growth? It's not just throwing salespeople at this, right? Do you have the marketing air cover? Do you have the data in your CRM that will fuel your marketing and sales efforts? Do you have an enablement program that will allow you to get all of those people that you want to bring on board up to speed? Do you have a tech stack that's totally rock solid and it's going to like make this thing a machine? Is your process repeatable and scalable? It's all about, I see people trying to grow really fast on super shaky foundations, and then they don't understand why. So you got to have that rock solid foundation before you worry about 2x, 3x growth.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think I see people just kind of force their way to growth a lot, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing happens on marketing and pretty much any aspect of that. So the foundation first, and then it sounds like the research, the figuring out the market, the research of that, and then the technology, systems, process, people that fit on top of that. Is that safe to assume? And then it's
at the end of the day, it all comes down to people, process, and tech. It always has.
People, process, and tech. There you have it. Pretty much that's like sales. That's sales in a nutshell at the end of the day, right? Easy to say 3 things, but very, very hard to kind of execute on. And I would say, it requires patience more than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome, Trish. Thank you for joining us. Where can people go to learn more?
So I would love if you'd visit our site. It's bridgegroupinc.com. And I think you'll get the most value from our site if you go to our resources page. We publish a ton of free research on sales development, inside sales, all different kinds of aspects of selling. So definitely the resources page is where you should go. And
awesome.
Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm a big mouth on LinkedIn. So yeah.
Definitely. And I just was looking up on LinkedIn. We have 475 mutual connections. Holy crap.
Oh my goodness.
How have we not run into each other before?
I don't know.
But yeah, also I want to just plug your book real quick, the Sales Development Playbook. Yep. Really, really good book for, I think, any salesperson at any level. It just kind of re-hits the home, like on the foundation framework. So thanks again for writing that. And we'll link all this stuff in the show notes below.
Thank you.